Hello and welcome back to another episode of Football. I'm your host, as always, Gerardo. Today we're going to do our weekend roundup of the Premier League, La Liga, and Liga MX title races so far. But before we get into everything, make sure you guys subscribe, like, check out all the platform links down below. Now let's immediately kick things off with Manchester City versus Chelsea. One of the biggest matches of the weekend. As you already know, Man City and Chelsea are fighting to make it into the top four spots. Not necessarily fighting for the title race anymore. I think it's pretty much all Liverpool's for sure, especially after Liverpool's 4-1 win against Ipswich. But now just solely focusing on the game between Man City and Chelsea. This was the match of the weekend, of course. Everyone was paying attention to this matchup. There were some big names that were introduced to the Manchester City squad, surprisingly from the start as well. I'm looking at Kusanov and Marmoush, who both started for Manchester City, both new winter signings. Didn't really expect them to start right away after only having a few training sessions with Pep Guardiola, but I think he wanted to see an immediate impact, and I guess there was an immediate impact, and that was from Kusanov in the very first 5 minutes. And I'm not going to say that it was a good impact. Those first 5 minutes, probably one of the worst 5-10 minutes I've ever seen from a debutant ever in my life. And I feel sorry for the guy. He's only 20 or 21 years old, if I'm not mistaken, but to debut the way he did, I understand. I mean, he's the first Uzbekistan player to ever play in the Premier League. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of pressure from family, friends. You know, there's a lot of eyeballs watching him, possibly even people from his nation just all talking about him, right? But also, I mean, the Premier League, to start your first match at such a young age, I completely understand why he would be nervous. But, you know, in this match, he needed to be on his A game. Unfortunately, you know, he gave up that first goal. It was a header back to Ederson that he didn't quite connect well. Felt right to Nico Jackson, who slotted it into Madueke. Madueke with an open net to just get the first goal for Chelsea, the only goal for Chelsea. Other than that, after that, I mean, after the nervousness kind of settled or kind of went away, I think he settled into the game a little bit more. I think he eventually came off in the 50th minute, and it was a needed substitution. He came off for John Stones. But overall, for Manchester City, they're starting to shape back up. Maybe some of the players are coming back from injury. Some of the players are starting to regain confidence. I'm looking at Phil Foden specifically. Valladolid had gotten the goal. Both Haaland and then Foden made it 3-1 in the second half. But, you know, just strictly focusing on Foden, who was one of Manchester City's most instrumental players last season, along with Rodri. But, you know, Foden had won the Football Player of the Year, I believe. So, I mean, you need him. They needed him to step up. He hadn't done so all season, but finally he's starting to. He has 9 goal contributions in his last 9 matches, a goal obviously on the day as well. And that's what exactly Man City needs. That's what Foden needs for his confidence. They need a threatening Phil Foden to be firing on all cylinders if they want to still fight for that top 4 spot, possibly even for the title race, if that's even possible for them right now. As for Chelsea, Cole Palmer needs to show up in these matches, and it could be a difficult match. You know, playing at your old home, playing against a lot of your ex teammates, and playing against a big team like Manchester City. But it's these matches where you separate yourself from being great to also just to being world class. And we know Cole Palmer, it can be a world class player, and he's proved that all season. Last season, he's been instrumental for Chelsea in this top four race. He's been one of their best players, no doubt. But it's these big matches. I'm looking when he played against Liverpool, now against Manchester City, where he really needs to show up, and he's not doing so. Seems to kind of shy away from the big moments, at least in the Premier League. So he really needs to step it up for Chelsea. We understand that this is a very inexperienced Chelsea squad. They knew that they weren't in it to win it, as in the title race, but they for sure need to be fighting for the Champions League spots. A team like Chelsea, a club like them, an institution like them should always be in the Champions League, along with Manchester City as well. So overall, a great match and a very important 3 points for Manchester City, which keeps them in the 4th spot with 41 points, tied with Newcastle, who are just below them because of goal differential. So that kind of wraps things up between that match. Now we're going to jump over to Bournemouth at Vitality Park. Bournemouth versus Nottingham, a 5-0 thrashing. Bournemouth just never let Nottingham play at all whatsoever. Nottingham didn't even show up to the field, which was insane because Nottingham have been one of the most informed teams but so have Bournemouth. So it was a battle of the most informed teams possibly in the Premier League at the moment. Bournemouth surprisingly are not contending for top four just yet after this performance against the second place Nottingham squad. I mean, they have to definitely be up there in top four, at least fighting for top four. Can Bournemouth do it? I think that's the question that everyone is raising at the moment. Can they fight for top four? I guess we'll see. Can they make it to European competitions? I think so. At least Europa League, possibly even Conference League, which would be a big achievement for a club like Bournemouth, who I don't even think have been in that situation ever in the club's institution. So it'd be very good for a solid group of players for Bournemouth, a very solid uh, start to this season. I guess mid-season now has been an impeccable run that they've had, and yeah, to be thrashing them five a team like Nottingham 5-0, to leave Nuno Espirito Santo with absolutely no answers, nothing but question marks over his team is just for Antonio Raiola too. I mean, every time he comes up against who are considered one of some of the best coaches in the Premier League, he's been coming out on top against all these guys like Pep Guardiola, Arteta, Nuno Espirito Santo, Ange Postecoglou. Bournemouth have been unstoppable when it comes against the big boys, and especially at home, one of the best teams to play to see play at home as well. A player who's been definitely instrumental for them is Justin Kluivert. I think um, he's been a really good form recently. I think he scored in the last match. He also got, I believe, 2 goals in this match as well. They haven't lost since November. Last match was against Brighton where they lost. So they're on a 12-match win streak. I believe 13 now for this match. Correct me if I'm wrong. Now, that's just the only question for Bournemouth is can they make it a top four? Can they at least reach European spots? And I think they can. Along with Nottingham Forest, I think these two teams have to be at least up there in the top five, top six for European spots. Now let's jump over to La Liga, where the title race is really only between three, and that's Atletico, Real Madrid, and Barcelona. But we'll start with Real Madrid, who destroyed Valladolid 3-0, and it was the Mbappe show. I think he scored a hat trick on the day, and a great way for him to establish himself and put himself second in the PICHICHI race. I think right before, Rafinha was up there and Lewandowski's still at the top. I think after Lewandowski's goal as well against Valencia, Kylian Mbappe is only 2 goals behind him, even though Lewandowski had more of a head start on Kylian Mbappe because Lewandowski had a better initial start to the campaign, at least goal scoring wise, versus Mbappe, who took some time to adapt. But yeah, now he's just firing on all cylinders, and that's what you want to see from a guy like Mbappe. We need to see the best version of Mbappe if Real Madrid want to be title contenders on all fronts, and so far that's what we're seeing at the start of 2025. For Real Madrid, this was an easy match against Valladolid. To beat them 3-0, I guess that was expected. That was the least they can do against a Valladolid team who are most likely going to get relegated this season. Mbappe carried this team. Vinicius wasn't really impactful. Rodrigo coming off starting also had an assist, if I'm not mistaken. But just going to the overall league table, Real Madrid right now are in first place with 49 points, 4 ahead of 4 points ahead of Atletico, and 7 points ahead of Barca. Atletico drew against Villarreal, so widening that gap between Atleti and Real Madrid, between first and second. So this was a very important result for Real Madrid. Now, as for individuals, let's look at Kylian Mbappe, of course, who he is right now at 15 goals. Lewandowski's at 17. Do you guys think that Kylian Mbappe can surpass Lewandowski in the PICHICHI race? I certainly think it can. And if he continues scoring the way he has, and if Lewandowski does not pick up his form, because he's been kind of like iffy in the past few months, then I think this is Mbappe's even title race, but also PICHICHI race to win. This is all Mbappe at the moment. And I mean, he can easily reach 20, 25 goals this season if he continues this goal scoring run. So I guess we'll see what happens with Mbappe. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Now we'll jump over to Barcelona versus Valencia, where Valencia never showed up to play. Quickly speaking of Valencia, I mean, it's unfortunate. Such a historic club like Valencia, who's used to always fighting for those top six, those European spots, always in the Champions League, always giving teams a run for their money. Unfortunately, it's just bad decisions in the background of the club, and it's seeing them now in relegation zone, and possibly will probably drop to Segunda if they do not get their act together, which doesn't seem likely after this horrible display. I mean, to concede 4 goals in 24 minutes, it's unheard of. It's shameful, honestly, from a first division team. You would expect it from a second or third division team in a cup match, but in a game where you're a team like Valencia, they're fighting for relegation. They need to be racking up points and making at least making games difficult for opponents like Barcelona and Madrid and Atletico. They cannot do this. The last time they got scored 7 against Barcelona was when Gary Neville was in charge. So this was obviously a horrible display from Valencia, who will be relegated, which is really poor from Valencia. Now, as for Barcelona, I guess you can't really highlight a person or yeah, you can't really highlight anybody from this match because everyone performed well. I mean, how can you not perform well when Valencia gave you everything to play well? Score 7 goals was, I guess, not surprising. They already did it against Valladolid. Now to do it against Valencia, it's what had to be done. As for Barcelona, that's the ultimate form of respect against your opponent. Just keep going for more, keep going for more. We saw Fermin Lopez got 2 goals, 2 assists. Ferran Torres even on the score sheet. Lewandowski, Yamal with an assist. Rafinha on the score sheet. It was a party for Barcelona. For Hansi Flick and his squad, it's insane to say and to think that 101 goals is how many goals they've scored this season, and we're just in January. We still have at least 3-4 months of games still, and that's still we still have cup matches, we still have league matches, we still have Champions League. So I mean, this team could easily, possibly reach 150 to 100 to 200 goals this season, which would be. I mean, I don't know when's the last time a team has scored that many goals. If there's a team that has scored that many goals, but it's absolutely insane what this Barcelona team can do going forward. Defensively, we know they have their restrictions. Not that they don't have good defensive players, but because they play with such a high block, it's easy for teams to just break through, as we saw against Benfica in the Champions League. But I guess it doesn't really matter when you're scoring 7 goals up front, right? But unfortunately, beating Valencia is nice, 7-1. It's the smaller team. I guess, smaller teams. It's the teams where you expect them to win, like against Getafe in the last league match. They should have gotten the win. Drew 1-1. They've dropped points a lot this season, and we see the big gap between them and Real Madrid right now. Barca in third place, Real Madrid in first. 7 points that separate them. They're all square on games as well. So those games against Atletico and Real Madrid are going to be deciders for all three of these squads. Those head-to-head matches, which I still think they all have to play against each other in this next few months. Those are going to be important games for all three of those teams to see who's really going to win the La Liga title. Lastly, let's jump to Mexico, where we're going to talk about Monterrey versus Pachuca, which was probably the best game of the weekend. We had 5 goals in this match, and it could have swung either way, but Pachuca came out on top. Monterrey, the subcampeón of the Liga MX Apertura season, just have not shown up. And with the impeccable squad that they have, with the signings that they've made this season as well, we would expect them to be already at the top. To have 3 wins, to have 9 points out of 9, and that's just not the case. They haven't won a single match this campaign. I think they have 2 draws, 1 loss now, and it's just an unfortunate start for Monterrey, very similar to what we're seeing with Cruz Azul, but we'll get into that in 1 second. But first, just focus on Monterrey. Yeah, I had them as title contenders and possibly winning this Clausura season. I'm not going to change that just yet because it's still very early in the season. Anything can happen. Teams can make it into 8th, 9th, 10th place and still win the league. We know that, as America proved to us last season. But for Monterrey, it is a concerning start for the Michelis and his squad. Given all the money that they've put into this team, they should not be struggling in the way that they have so far. As for Pachuca, last season they were 16th place. We know that they were really poor last season, but this season it's so weird. I mean, this is a regular thing for Pachuca, where one season they'll do really good, the next season they'll do really poor, and then it just jumps between that. It looks like it's going to be another good season after a poor season. So they've gotten off to a good start. I think they're already in 3rd or 4th place, if I'm not mistaken. 2 wins and a draw or something like that. And yeah, to beat Monterrey at the Estadio BBVA, a good result. Pachuca taking advantage of Andrada's horrific performance, really poor performance. Gave John Kennedy, the Brazilian, the wonder Brazilian, a goal on this day as well, on this game, which was important for him, important for Pachuca. They need all their star players to be getting ready to be in goal scoring form, especially looking forward to the Club World Cup. But yeah, overall, good start for Pachuca to this season. Now jumping a little bit to Cruz Azul, who a lot of people are expecting to be title contenders as well for this season, given that they've also made a lot of important signings and are still continuing to make important signings. They just, like the day or two ago, they signed Mateus Bogus from LAFC, one of LAFC's most important players. And, they brought in Luca Romero. They brought in one or two other players, Chiquito Rosco as well. Overall, Cruz Azul have made an impeccable signings in this winter transfer window, but it's just the backroom stuff that I think is really affecting the squad, and it's kind of seeping onto the field. You kind of see it. They haven't won a single match so far at the beginning of this campaign. They're sitting in 17th place, just above Santos, who have 0 points. Cruz Azul only have 2 points. That's 2 draws and a loss, and that most recent loss coming against Juarez and now tying against a team like Puebla. For Cruz Azul, this is not the kind of start you were expecting. With Anselmi dropping them, with not a single win, it's just a bad start to 2025. I don't think anyone expected that. But that is all for this weekend's wrap-up. If you guys want to see or hear more of other matches, just let me know in the comments. I'll always respond. But make sure you guys subscribe, check out all the platform links down below. I will see you guys on the next one. Peace out.